Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. I'm Andeea, a licensed addiction counselor, and along with my co-host, Laura Kissman, a quantum nutritionist, we will be inviting expert scientists, clinicians, survivors, and thrivers to distill their pearls of wisdom attained from applying quantum biology to their fields of research and everyday lives. Our goal is to bring you easy to understand principles and practices about the study of light, water, and magnetism so you can take your health into your own hands. This episode is sponsored by Viva Rays, the only eyewear company that truly understands your biology. Viva Rays are advanced blue light glasses designed with circadian biology in mind. Unlike typical blue blockers, they filter light in harmony with your body's natural rhythms, helping you sleep deeper, feel more energized, and protect your long-term health. We love companies that support biology-backed wellness, and Viva Rays is leading the way. Use code QuantumHealthy at vivarays.com to save 15% and support your sleep, focus, and natural energy the way nature intended. Enjoy this episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. We have Carrie Bennett back today for the second time. Thank you for being here, Carrie.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you both again.
Oh, so are we. So for those of you who don't know who Carrie is, she has a bachelor's of science in biology and a master's in science in nutrition. She is a faculty member at the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, where both Laura and I have went, and she is just on a mission to teach clients how to create a healing environment, and she is such a big voice in this space when it comes to explaining the science. And even if you don't have a science background and you look at Carrie's content, you will start to have an understanding of the quantum practices and principles that we love to highlight in this podcast. So Laura is going to start us off, and yeah, we're going to have a great conversation today on cancer and through the lens of quantum biology.
Great.
Welcome,
I'm
Carrie.
excited. Yeah, thanks for having me again. This is so much fun.
It's a heavy topic, but
It is
hopefully
a
we'll
heavy
find a way to smile and give hope
Sure.
through this. So
It's fun because I think people are not given the tools, all the information, right? And so I think go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you, but I think the reason why I get so excited about talking about such a devastating issue is that, oh my gosh, this is stuff you may have never heard about before. And it gives hope for people, which is the most important thing.
yes, and everything, I guess just a caveat to start or disclaimer to start is that none of this is medical advice.
None of it is.
Use your designated practitioners and physicians and whatever treatments, you have to make that choice. But this is stuff you can do on the side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In
And
addition
also,
to. Yeah.
yeah. And then even like that's if you get a cancer diagnosis, but obviously we're always looking through the eyes of prevention, right?
Mhm.
So it does seem really fitting to have you teach this, because what the audience doesn't know is that you taught us about water on our course together, and you also taught us about mitochondria. And we've had an episode on water, so everybody go back, please, and listen to episode, I believe it's 8 with Carrie Bennett. It's fabulous. But the mitochondria that they're going to come up today, in a number of ways, I'm sure, but they're really key to cancer. So, and just before we get into some of those details, I know myself in my little tiny practice, I'm seeing cancer clients more than ever. And, I tried to Google it last night and get statistics on my country in Canada, and it doesn't really seem like cancer's going up. They mentioned that, it's really due to our immigration policy, with our population has really risen, and then more diagnostic tools. But then there's some other hints. I know there's a slide that a colleague of ours keeps showing by the ethical skeptic about this spike. There's a spike in the 14th week of 2021. So there's some questions about that. We don't have to go there, but I'll let the listeners think about what that might be about. But Edward Dow did something in 2022, and yeah, a lot of had really gone up. The other thing I wanted, just my local paper. In the last 2 weeks, there was a mention of colorectal cancer going up in the youth under 30. And then somebody we know just got diagnosed, 21 years old, and breast cancer. And at the end of the article, they said, there's reasons and this and that, but they found the last line was, but we really don't know why. And I think there's a lot of people just, questioning this. So the first question is, are you seeing a rise, and what motivated you to create a cancer workshop recently?
Yeah, I am seeing a rise. And it's not just in like my client population, it's also just in, it's like people, right? Like I have a couple of longtime clients who don't necessarily subscribe to the principles that I teach here. They're more along the lines of when I used to do more fitness training. And it was just like, like you said, lung cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer. It just does. And it's not just, and it doesn't just seem to be stage 1, stage 2. It seems to be a more aggressive form that I'm seeing more recently as well, which is alarming. And so partly that prompted me partly that prompted me to teach this webinar. The other part was that, one of my favorite researchers in the world wrote a very compelling paper connecting water and cancer. And I think it needs to be highlighted more. And so I think teaching about it and giving people access to reading it, it's a very accessible paper, gives people just additional information. And I know a lot of people who come to my work are clinicians, and they're physicians, they're clinicians. And so my thought is, why not highlight the fact that this may be at play and no one's talking about it?
Mm. We would love that paper. I'm sure we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it for sure.
If you could send that to us, or even give the name, we can look it up. But I too did a workshop fall 2023. It was just like I had a cancer client with her journey, and that I get probably motivated it, but it was intuitive. It just felt like this is what the world needs right now, just to think about some other things. So I'm really interested in doing your workshop to then integrate it in, because you're going to be full of a whole bunch of things that I'm sure I've never thought of. But in that workshop, something that came was to look at all the different etiologies of cancer and ideas that people have about cancer. And there's quite a few. So I'm just going to name a few. And then what I'd obviously like, any comments you may have on that, but also we really want to get to the quantum perspective of cancer. So the ones so first of all, the psycho-emotional root cause of cancer, small traumas, big traumas, and included in that, I would say there's homeopathy. We have a homeopathy perspective, but also a German new medicine perspective on that. And then very much that combination of environmental toxicity and nutrient deficiency. That would be more the functional medicine model. Then there's the chromosomal imbalance theory with I can't even say it, aneuploidy. I'm not an expert on that, but I did present about it. Then really Dr. Doug Wallace, the mitochondrial bioenergetic view. And then of course, Dr. Thomas Seyfried has taken that a step further and really given some practical, like done more research, granted with rodents, but now he's, I do know personally that he's communicating with people with cancer and giving them his protocol. And we're seeing effects, which is positive effects of that, which is great. The metabolic mitochondrial theory. Then there's the acid alkaline theory, where we all need to eat more alkaline. And I really subscribed to that for a long time, just because it's supposed to be acidic, the micro environment around the tumor is acidic. Then there's the somatic genetic theory of mutations, which I think very much in conventional medicine is we really think about that, where the gene is the gun and the environment is the trigger. Well, I guess, yeah, to some degree. Then this isolation theory, Dr. Zach Bush, it kind of talks about that, where it's a lack of cellular signaling. And then the fungal theory, parasite theory, the mold theory, and then there's pardon my language, but the shitty luck theory. So I just want to hand that over to you and see what you think.
I could connect all of those to mitochondria and water, but we don't have enough time for that. But literally,
love it.
Yeah.
That says a lot right there.
Right. I mean, okay. So yeah, there are a lot of theories, but I do believe the reason why I like studying it from this perspective that we're talking about, and I guess I most closely resonate with Doug Wallace and then Thomas Seyfried because of the fact that the mitochondrial metabolics basically at play. It needs to be optimized, right? And so what I would say is where we would start with this conversation to understand this is to understand. I mean, acid alkaline. It's okay. So to understand what's happening in cancer, and we have to understand what the mitochondria are doing. So let's review that like briefly here. So in a healthy cell, it's always good to start with a healthy cell, and then we can see the comparison. So in a healthy cell, mitochondria are taking electrons and protons from things like food sources and funneling those to make water, ATP, and infrared heat, right? And when mitochondria can do that efficiently and make adequate water, make adequate ATP, make adequate infrared, they are making the energy currency of the cell, right? Cells have adequate energy. And another way to kind of take this step further is, and we're not going to talk in detail because we did a podcast on this already, but it's important to highlight that water isn't just random water, right? It's a very special form of water that those mitochondria make and stays inside of the cell called easy water that has a negative charge. So another way to view an alkaline environment is negative charge. Alkalinity is nothing more than having more electrons, whereas acidity is nothing more than having an excess of protons. And so yes, a cell needs an alkaline environment, but it has to do with that negatively charged water, maintaining it. And so when that is happening, the cell has all the energy it needs in order to function and run all of its programs. It has all of the correct signaling happening because mitochondria are literally signaling to the genome. They're signaling to our DNA to say, okay, this is what's happening. And they do that with light, right? They emit light signals. They're called biophotons or reactive oxygen species. And we want them. Reactive oxygen species or oxidative stress has gotten a bad reputation because if we, in the models where you suppress it completely, you actually start to see bad consequences, right? You start to actually see higher mortality or more dysfunction happening. So we need some of this reactive oxygen signaling because the DNA basically sucks in those photons of light as information to say, okay, now's the time to make this protein, run this pathway, it optimizes the cell. And so the DNA knows what to do. The genetics knows what to do based on what the mitochondria is signaling. And so if the mitochondria become faulty signalers, absolutely, the genetics has a potential to go awry. But I always found it very fascinating that if you take a tumor, a solid tumor, and when they've done pathological analysis of it and run it under to see like, okay, what kind of cells are in here? A breast cancer tumor or any tumor, it doesn't matter, but it doesn't just contain cells of that specific tissue type, right? So a tumor in a breast could have hair follicles, kidney cells, lung cells, right? And so essentially the cell has forgotten its identity because it's not getting the correct signaling, right? It's not getting the correct signaling. And so yes, genetics is involved, but is it the chicken or the egg? Who knows what the chicken or the egg answer is, but is it the primary factor driving it, or is there something else going awry first? And I'm a firm believer that mitochondrial dysfunction happens first. One of the other reasons why I think mitochondrial dysfunction plays a key role in all this, and stop me if you want to get clarification. But one of the other things that I think is at play here is, and this is let's talk about Jerry's particular paper, right? Jerry Pollack is the world's leading researcher in easy water. And just this past fall, he wrote a paper that was basically, let me pull up the exact title here for you. Here it is.
We'll get that in the show notes, hopefully, too.
Perfect. Yeah. It's called Cancer, an Unexpectedly Critical Role of Cell Water. And what he connected the dots with in this paper was that all cells, when they get drained of a certain, when their negative charge drains to a critical threshold, they start to divide. That's a natural thing that happens in all cells. Cells have to temporarily drain of that negative charge to instigate cell division. It would make sense because that exclusion zone water, that easy water, it's a gel state. In order for a cell to divide, you got to divvy up the components. Things can't move freely in a gelled state. So the water essentially becomes more neutral or even positively charged so that the water it behaves more like a true liquid. And in that true liquid, you have these spindles that happen and they say, okay, let's pull these organelles here, let's pull this and these chromosomes, let's pull it all into two separate cells. And then the cells pinch and then they're designed to then reestablish that exclusion zone water. if those mitochondria are not able to reestablish the exclusion zone water, if something is impairing that exclusion zone water from reforming, the cell gets the signal to divide uncontrollably, and it will not stop. So it's easy to see how water alone can change from this healthy EZ to this temporarily needed but unhealthy bulk form. And if it can't get reestablished, the cell it divides, and that is called a tumor. A tumor forms. And that's only the tip of the iceberg with this when it comes to mitochondria and the water. But that's a key thing that he highlighted in that research article that no one is talking about.
No one, but yeah. So my understanding of cancer when I did my workshop, one of the conclusions I came to was it's a lack of EZ. But I didn't really understand this because that paper probably wasn't out. And the way you've put all this together, wow. We've been speaking to some other colleagues on cancer, and definitely the whole the photobioelectric effect. But again, even if that's the cause, it could be dehydrating the exclusion zone water and then causing the
Yeah.
mitochondrial dysfunction, right?
So from there, you have to look at two different things, right?
Okay.
What can harm the mitochondria? So what causes
Right.
mitochondrial dysfunction? And that's where you can tie in. Is it toxins in the environment? Is it non-native EMFs? Can those mitochondria solely become dysfunctional because they can't burn fat as a fuel source? And so they're naturally going to create more reactive oxygen species when they burn just sugar, right? And so you have to ask yourself, you basically have to ask yourself what's caught. So that's where a lot of these other theories can tie in. Deuterium comes into play as well here because deuterium can jam up the mitochondria. Now, interestingly, during cell division, this is where Gabor Samlier has done, he's a deuterium researcher, right? He's done an amazing role. I don't think people realize that deuterium depletion is specifically deuterium depleted water. That is an approved veterinary cancer treatment in Europe, right? And because he's done so much work on this. And what he found was that temporarily the cells actually export deuterium out of the cell. You have to change the deuterium ratio. Deuterium is like a different version of hydrogen. So with the cell, we want to have only so much in the cell. It actually helps to maintain exclusion zone water. We don't want it in the mitochondria. But interestingly, before a cell divides, it gets rid of its deuterium to the outside of the cell. What is deuterium? It's an acid. It's a proton. Right? That's why you talk about an acidic tumor microenvironment, because again, the cell was doing naturally what it was designed to do. It was kicking deuterium out. It was temporarily depleting exclusion zone water. And then unfortunately, it did not get to reestablish that exclusion zone water or the mitochondria were just highly dysfunctional and continued to create an impaired exclusion. It weren't making water themselves. And so that's all of a sudden you get this microenvironment divide uncontrollably, purge out the acid, deuterium. And so that's what forms, that's what happens. And so it's interesting how all of this really connects and intersects with what is harming the mitochondria or what is preventing exclusion zone water from reforming in the first place. And that's where I do think it is a combination of it's a combination of toxins from the food, from the air, from the water. It can be nutrient deficiencies because mitochondria require nutrients. The cell requires things like magnesium, potassium, right? We require certain nutrients. It can also be, I think, what's insidious these days and people are unaware of is non-native EMFs. Because Jerry also read another paper, which is very interesting, that showed that in the presence of just Wi-Fi, which is, it's not great, but we're not talking about the layering of EMFs that people have these days, that exclusion zone water wasn't able to form in the first place to the correct extent. So you layer these things on and you realize, wow, this could play a huge role in what's happening here in the increases in cancer that we're seeing.
I have thought about that for so long because that's the word right there, layering. We have so many layers of different toxins. In fact, I found quantum biology through plastic. That was my gateway drug into quantum biology, is mitigating my plastic in my house. And from there, I just learned about different levels. And then, going down the quantum road, you find even more. and they're invisible to us. Like the ones I was learning about were physical objects, right? We could see them, and these are not seen. So
Yeah.
interesting.
It is so interesting. And I think it's important for just people to be aware. And again, we'll talk about maybe some supports. And again, not medical advice, but I like to view it as these are just things that we would want to do on a daily basis, anyways, be aware of to support our overall health. Because whether the cell has drained of exclusion zone water to the extent that it's dividing it uncontrollably, or it's just drained to a critical threshold and the cell can't run all of its programs, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about a cell that's just not maintaining adequate energy. And if it reaches a critical threshold, it can become cancerous. And so again, the other thing about this, if I can layer in one more piece with the mitochondria, is that the mitochondria are designed to to make melatonin. Basically, they make melatonin inside of the cell. And this is a melatonin that no one talks about or thinks about these days. We only think about the pineal melatonin, which is secreted at night to help us go to sleep. But the cellular melatonin, it's made by the mitochondria and stays inside of the cell. It's designed to help the mitochondria repair themselves. So let's say there is something that's creating mitochondrial dysfunction. Well, there is a built-in repair with that melatonin. The other thing with that melatonin is if the cell has reached a critical threshold and it says, oh gosh, we're going to start to divide uncontrollably, or if it senses uncontrollable cell division, it's designed to run apoptosis. And if you don't have adequate melatonin or mitochondrial signaling to do that, you cannot run apoptosis.
Carrie, can I interrupt and just ask you to define apoptosis? Because that might be a big word they may not know, and autophagy.
Sure. Apoptosis is a built-in program for a cell to basically terminate itself. Because it senses that it's no longer functioning well for the good of the whole, for the good of the organ. And we have like this built-in filtering out process inside of our cells. And so we run apoptosis. And the mitochondria are designed to both make the melatonin that runs apoptosis and signal it. And if they can't signal it, or they're not making the melatonin, you can see then how you get this uncontrollable cell division again. The other interesting component here is that, and the reason why I think mitochondria are so central here is that there was a research article put out by one of my favorite melatonin researchers called Russell Reiter. He has researched pineal melatonin extensively, but very recently he's teamed up, as you know, with light and optics researcher Scott Zimmerman. Yeah, and they're starting to really talk about infrared light really being critical for the mitochondria inside of the cells to make this cellular melatonin. Well, what are we all deficient in these days? Well, we're deficient in infrared light because our window glass blocks a majority of it, and modern lighting is completely devoid of it unless we have incandescent lighting or candles. And so again, all of this I think is contributing. These layers are contributing to the fact that our cells just can't run natural programs that they're designed to do to clear out the damage. Another such program is autophagy, right? That's more what I call the recycling inside of the cell, where the cell says, here's a bunch of broken parts. Let's see if we can purge the really broken parts and combine with other clean parts from other parts of the cell, functioning parts, and let's just try to build new or repair, if you will. And so again, these programs were designed to run all the time. We just need the appropriate inputs, and near infrared light is deficient these days. And then lastly, and then we can maybe break this down however you want to, is that what Russell did in one of his research articles was he found that he wrote a research article called Part-Time Cancer. And what he found was that when adequate melatonin was present, mitochondria, which naturally will have a very dysfunctional form of metabolism, right? They're going to be their cells are going to have a very dysfunctional form of metabolism in cancer cells where mitochondria are not performing, right? So what he found was that with appropriate melatonin, the cell all of a sudden would go back to the mitochondrial healthy metabolism. And so he'd set up experiments to show if in an appropriate light dark setting where the darkness is helping to produce that melatonin, that cells, even through that pineal melatonin alone, that cells were able to use that melatonin to stop being cancerous for a part of the night, right? For a part of the night. But when that melatonin was gone, they reverted back to the unhealthy metabolism. It's not making water. It's not making healthy water. It's not making healthy ATP, infrared. And so all of these things just in my brain, I kind of had little pieces of all of these. And then all of a sudden it's like, something just clicked. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many pieces here that are coming together that I think it's really important for people to know about.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
so many thoughts on that. So cancer is so much more like okay, going back to applied quantum biology 101, toxic, it's that equation of avoiding disease is avoiding the toxic light and increasing the solar, the
Yeah.
sunlight and the healthy light, right? Oh my gosh.
Well,
And then
both of those
keeping,
make melatonin, right? Like, so those
of
help
course,
to make melatonin in the cells. And then if we avoid the toxic stuff at night, right, it's all about preserving melatonin at night or influencing its production during the day.
but also as you explained, the water,
The water then too.
right?
Yeah.
Because the non-native EMFs are dehydrating the cells or the mitochondria. They can't
Well,
make
they
the water,
are.
right?
And the blue light inhibits that. That's Glenn Jeffrey's work, right? The blue light
Okay.
inhibits water
Right.
production in the mitochondria. He's the one who I had a lovely chat with a while back, but I reached out to him before I went to present to the water conference because he was coming out with some very critical research showing that artificial blue light was preferentially absorbed by mitochondria in their water producing step, and it inhibited that water production. So,
Oh.
gosh, I mean, so if we're not making the water in the first place, because we're under artificial blue light all hours of the day, frankly, and we don't have any of the infrared, and we're not necessarily doing the additional things to maintain exclusion zone water. We're being exposed to more toxins that are continuing to harm the mitochondria. It adds up to me to why we're potentially seeing, depending on the sources you read, an increase in cancer. And I always, I'm always cautious about using Google or mainstream media because I think that sometimes it's easier to get a better picture as to what's happening with something, whether it's cancer or Alzheimer's disease. Like when you just talk to friends and family members and you start to hear, oh, a friend of a friend or so and so, and then you start to get a bigger picture as well. This is more than I've ever experienced in my lifetime in terms of knowing people who are going through this. And so yeah, again, I hope this ultimately can provide information that leads to hope, that leads to maybe some things that people can look into for further supports.
Yeah.
That Glenn Jeffrey's work, I don't know much about that, but I love that you highlighted that it's any time of the day with blue light because people
Oh,
think, they have lights on just to feel happier or brighter in the
yeah,
darker winter, but they don't realize that that's actually contributing to dehydration and
yeah.
not just cancer, but chronic disease and everything else. And you're making, I think Andy and I both want to keep our day jobs as applied quantum biology coaches because it's so relevant. People don't really realize it, but it's so relevant what we're teaching people and so practical and so preventative.
Totally. It absolutely is. And
Yeah.
so yeah, again, I don't think we can ever avoid every toxin or we can ever avoid all non-native EMFs, but I do think that there's some critical things that people can do in order to, if you think to yourself, okay, so this is where my brain would go. If this were a new topic that was being presented to me, I would think to myself, let me look up things that I'm exposed to regularly or doing regularly. And is there any indication that they're impairing the mitochondria in any way? Or is there any indication that they're impairing the structured water exclusion zone? That research is not going to be there. I mean, there's very little research right there. That's a really new area of research. But if I was, personally using maybe personal care products or cleaning products, or I was drinking tap water, or it could be full of toxins, or thinking about my glyphosate consumption, which is, Roundup, right? This is, spring is here in my area, and what do I see? But last week, it's like literally every house on the block has what's called True Green coming out, and shh,
Yeah.
it's like there's the awareness is not there yet when it comes to this stuff. And I want people to say, like, maybe there's a different way, a different thing you can do because all of these things could be harming the mitochondria and leading or predisposing your mitochondria to become dysfunctional to the extent of cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
that
gosh. And
is,
glyphosate. Sorry,
yeah,
sorry,
we
Andeea.
use nature as our guide here, right? So I think we should, so because we're going to be running out of time shortly, think we should jump into the things people can do. And that's what I teach is like just always be asking, is it aligned with nature? Because when it's aligned with
Yeah,
nature, it's gonna be it's gonna be the answer. because she's got all the
Yes,
answers.
totally.
What are some
Totally.
big things that come to mind, Carrie?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think step one, we do go back to our circadian basics, which would be block the artificial light, especially, at nighttime. And then again, before the sunrise is in the morning, if you wake up. So use those orange tone blue blockers and then go outside and get that natural light. In the winter, it's through the eyes. In the spring, summer, fall, when the temperature allows, you get it through the skin as well. Because if you can pull that infrared in through the skin, it builds the exclusion zone water and it helps the mitochondria to maintain melatonin production. I also think earthing and grounding is entirely underrated because it also helps to build exclusion zone water and negative charge. So if negative charge needs to be reestablished, again, hypothesis, if negative charge is designed to be reestablished after a cell goes through cell division and temporarily diminishes this charge, well, we were designed to be in constant contact with the negative charge of the earth. Is there something about that lack of connection that's preventing that in some people from reestablishing itself? So earthing and grounding, and it doesn't have to be hours on end. And I find that people have a barrier to entry sometimes where it's like, well, if I can't do it for 20 minutes straight, it's worthless. It's like, no, literally little recharges throughout the day can make a big, big difference. I also think that it's important to drink good quality water. I think that good quality water means it's filtered. I think it means that if possible, it's remineralized and structured as well. And there's different ways to do that, adding in an earth-based form of minerals. And again, this is the fun part, right? I am finding that earth-based minerals help the water to get pulled into the cell. Ocean-based minerals help the water maintain the blood volume and maintain the space around the cells, which have more of a mineral composition of the ocean, whereas cells have a mineral composition of the earth. And so again, let's think about fulvic based or humic based sources maybe of minerals or ocean based sources of minerals. And then structuring water can be as simple as, getting a blue glass, right, from Blue Bottle Love because, she does a lovely job. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Perfect. Yeah. But there's so many ways to do that. So again, that I would have to come back for an entire topic on that one. But there's ways to structure it, and I do believe that actually helps the water to reach the cells for the cells to help to reestablish this healthy negative charge. Other things that I really think are important too would be maintaining a really dark sleep space and prioritizing earlier sleep. I think when we start to sync our circadian rhythm by blocking the artificial light at night, we have to honor that natural rhythm that we may feel at different seasons to sleep. And for some people, it's hard for them to be like, well, it's 8 o'clock at night. My kids go to bed at 8 o'clock at night. Why would I want to go to bed? But it's like that might be your body asking because you get additional repair. So I do find that if you can, for the most part, get to bed at an earlier time and allow for that restorative sleep that happens during those first 4 hours of sleep, typically syncing up with being asleep at the latest around 10 p.m. It can be very beneficial so all the repair programs that help to clear cancer, like apoptosis and run autophagy, that recycling program, can really sync up with appropriate hormone signaling at that time.
Just a thought on sleep, just a share for our audience. I've been using the Oura Ring. I'm not trying to promote the Oura Ring. There's all different ways you can look at your sleep, but I have to say that this Oura Ring, I have to credit it to why I'm getting to bed earlier, because I've figured out that when you go to bed earlier, no matter how many times you wake up in a night, you get a higher sleep score. So there's that inner competitive that wants to beat her sleep score. So I'm actually getting to bed earlier most nights, not every night, but yeah, I just want to add that.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Absolutely. And so yeah, honoring the sleep. And then I also think in terms of non-native EMFs,
Yes.
wearable devices. Like I know when with your Oura Ring, I know you're aware, many people probably aren't, that you wear it on airplane mode, right? That you can actually turn off the EMFs from that. But again, we're having these EMFs in closer proximity. It used to be just the office Wi-Fi router and, a cell phone, but now it's lots of wireless radiation, including AirPods, including a smartwatch, including trackers. So take them off your body, right?
Exactly.
Take those devices off your body if they can't be put into airplane mode. That goes a long way towards mitigating the intensity of EMFs that you're being exposed to. And then as a slight addition, just to talk about, what about additional infrared supports? It's so interesting that there are certain approved cancer therapies or adjuvants around the world that actually involve infrared. Mistletoe therapy, for example, stimulates fever. And there are many cases of spontaneous remission happening post-fever. And so what is it? Is it the infrared allowing the body to finally run apoptosis, or is it reestablishing exclusion zone water, or a combination of those things? Maybe. What about sauna? Why does sauna use have such, you look at, there's a plethora of sauna studies that have looked at not just acute sauna use, but over the course of decades. And you see a reduction in all-cause mortality when you're exposed by 40% when people saunaed more frequently. You see, that sauna, that's a really, really potent source of infrared. So again, what about these infrared-based therapies that we might be able to supplement with, especially during the parts of the year when we're maybe more infrared deficient? Like for me, middle of winter in Michigan, I'm probably, even though I use incandescent bulbs, I'm probably not getting the intensity of infrared I would have been around had I had campfire or fire as my main source of heating. So
Carrie,
yeah.
A question on infrared. What do you think about cold therapy to make the body build infrared, and would that help the exclusion zone?
Yeah, I think it does. I think, again, I do think that people need to coach that appropriately. For some people, super low leptin, right? That could be too big of a stressor. Someone who's got nervous system dysregulation, that could be too big of a stressor. But in someone who is intrigued by the idea, I think step one is someone is intrigued by it. And then yeah, when you get cold, the mitochondria are coached to make more infrared for us. Not only that, but the cold also helps to generate our own light inside of our bodies, temporarily more light. And that maintains another negative charge pathway, which is melanin, right? Melanin, which is again, another topic in there. So yeah, I think there could be a lot of benefit to cold exposures.
Okay, on melanin, I wanted to ask you too. So that's one way to produce some melanin. And I keep thinking about that because I was telling somebody that I was south and I had a tan, and that one of the ways I'm trying to preserve my tan is I've been dipping in the river. I don't know if it's working because it's starting to fade. I'm probably doing too much blue light. But I just wanted to ask you, do you see melanin renovation as as a therapy as well, in terms of getting more sunlight, getting, in the summer, and building your solar callus, and for those that, that maybe burn, but to try and get a tan? Do you see that as a preventative measure?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. It's there. Well, number one, sunlight exposure. More sunlight exposure is directly connected with reduction of cancer risks across the board, many different types of cancers, from the hormonally driven cancers to lung cancer to, I mean, so to me, sunlight exposure is essential when it comes to cancer prevention. But interestingly, and I'm certain you're aware of this research, is that even in individuals who are diagnosed with melanoma, those who had more sunlight exposure on their body were the least likely to die. And so there has to be something about the nourishment we get through maintaining melanin and that electrical nourishment that we can get with that, plus the infrared, in helping to support the body in so many ways.
Okay. On sort of lifestyle, and then if we got a chance, we'll go to diet and supplementary recommendations. I've heard you say this before, and I'd love to bring this out, draw it out a little bit. What about mindset?
It's huge, right? I think one of the very first things that I actually read, and this was probably a decade ago or more now, probably longer, gosh, was a book that was written by a woman who was she was a social worker at an oncology clinic. And every once in a while, people would come back, and who were given basically that we have nothing left for you. You're stage 4. We've got nothing left for you. Go home and just enjoy whatever life you have left. And they would come back, a year later, a couple of years later, months later, that she was just like, what did you do? Right? Like, what's going on? What did you do? I'm so happy to see you, And so she was very interested in kind of figuring out what these people were doing. And certainly they had made several lifestyle changes, but what she cataloged after going over 1,000 different case reports of spontaneous remission in these individuals who were given, I'm sorry, you don't have much time left. She found the number one thing that they had in common was hope. So there's something about that mindset. The other thing that was interesting that other research has highlighted, and unfortunately I have seen this clinically as well, is that when people were given a sentence of, you have 3 months left to live, I have seen, unfortunately, on the dot of 3 months, right, where people have passed away. And again, could that be coincidental? It absolutely could be coincidental, but at the same time, what if? What if maintaining a mindset of hope can make a big difference when it comes to all this, as opposed to the mindset of fear. And fear is what we're really, when we're given a cancer diagnosis, that's the first thing that happens, is we instantaneously go into fear mode. And there's no healing. No healing can happen when people are dominated by fear. It's just impossible. The physiology is impossible. And so I think it's really important to talk about what mindset could look like, and not to say, oh, we can't have fear, right? Because I think fear is a natural response. But what else can we do beyond living in fear to help move our body and our mindset into a more healing, through a more healing lens, essentially, so it can run its repair programs?
Right. Exercise quickly? Yes, no?
Sure. Again, I think exercise is actually maintaining infrared and healthy mitochondria, right? What does the body do when we exercise? We heat up, right? We make infrared. And what does exercise do as well? It stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis. And so we're able to create new healthy mitochondria. Fasting similarly, right? Like people who've done fasting or ketosis, those are ways where we can clear out damaged mitochondria and also sometimes stimulate new ones. And so I think it's good if someone is healthy enough to be able to do either of those modalities in order to essentially weed out the dysfunctional mitochondria and support the new ones.
Okay, quickly, supplementation. Do you have any favorites? I've got a couple I could ask specifically on.
Go ahead and ask me.
Okay, deuterium depleted water. That would be
Yeah,
my
I was gonna say, do you consider that a supplement? Yeah,
yeah.
I
Or
would
food.
recommend. No, I'm totally on board with that. I would recommend someone, if someone does have a cancer diagnosis, that they look into deuterium depleted water with the permission from their physician, because there is again, Dr. Somlier has done amazing work in going through a specific deuterium depletion protocol, using deuterium depleted water and gradually decreasing it. And he's done it both. He's shown research where he's done it both as its own therapy, but also as a cancer adjuvant. And in both cases, it's the research is compelling for people to look into. So yes, I would say look into that.
Okay. Ethylene blue, people are talking about. Lots of questions that it would be a whole, maybe that's another podcast. Yeah, but I was thinking just the question is with active cancer.
Yeah, it is anything that you can get to bring the mitochondria more strongly into their healthy metabolism, essentially flip them out of that dysfunctional Warburg metabolism, that's another name for the dysfunctional one, into the healthy metabolism. And methylene blue is one of the things that absolutely can do that.
Excellent. Thanks for that quick answer. I know we're running out of time. And then, oh yeah, that would be it, I guess. Okay. Yeah. Case
All right,
studies?
so
I don't think we have time.
go on this beautiful conversation. And we've already asked you, Carrie, what does quantum healthy mean to you? So today we'd love to I guess you really have summed it up already, but like, what does prevention of cancer, just maintaining the healthiest body that we possibly can, which is really another way of saying, what does quantum healthy mean to you? How would you answer this time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very similar, right? It's just connecting to nature and realizing that there are so many overlooked and underrated things out there that we could be doing. So maintaining health to me is, what could I get right now from my local environment? And could it be light exposure through the eyes or through the skin? It could be. What about earthing and grounding? What about just the fact that people maintain health greater when they're around trees or greenery or flowing water, or so underrated? But for me, it's the main thing I look to for health, is to get outside into nature, connect more deeply, and just surrender in a way. And that's an interesting word, because sometimes people use surrender as a oh, I've given up. But I've seen it enough times in clinical practice where people have gotten that message, whether it was through water, which sounds weird, but they've gotten that message through water, or whether it was through working with maybe someone who is clairvoyant or clairsentient, or just different, or just seeing that word over and over again and just honoring it. It's like, okay, maybe my body just needs to do its thing right now for a little while. Maybe, and this is very German new medicine, right? Maybe cancer, it doesn't need to be cleared. Maybe cancer is the result of something that's already happened, and my body just needs a little bit of time and space and some peace in nature in order to help facilitate resolving it and healing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we use that is in addiction recovery, the word surrender.
Mhm.
And when two people are, like back in the day, they have guns to each other, and when the armies would throw up the surrender flag, that actually was a sign that they wanted to live. It wasn't a sign of weakness, but a lot of times we think of that word surrender as weakness, but it really can, we really can flip our mindset around that word.
Nice. Nice. Carrie, how, just quickly, we have the other podcast, but just refresh our listeners how they can reach you and any interesting offerings that you have or upcoming exciting things.
Sure. So carriebwellness.com is my website, or Carrie B Wellness on Instagram are two hubs. I do put out videos on YouTube as well and have a newsletter. So you feel free to sign up for either of those. And then, yeah, a couple of things, right? So there, I do have my Redefining Cancer webinar, right? It's $25. So if anyone wants to go, it's 2 hours of just some really connecting these dots again with graphics, for people to really get a good understanding of what's going on at a deeper level here. And then I have a retreat coming up that I am co-hosting with another quantum alum, Oksana Hansen, and that's in June in Tennessee, just south of Nashville, where our goal is just to get together and, kind of embody this in person and be together and learn and just connect in nature. So super excited for that as well. And more information can be found on my website.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, we know Oksana well. Our listeners will know her very soon. Hint, hint. And we would both love to come to that. We just have to figure things out.
The logistics. There's always logistics.
Logistics. So Carrie, just knowing you have to go, but quickly, thank you so much again for coming on Quantum Healthy and for heeding the call to educate and specifically tackling this heavy subject of cancer in your recent workshop and bringing the light to it with your hope, optimism, humor, and this clarion call to return to nature.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for sticking around at the end of this podcast. We want to thank our sponsor, Viva Rays, who allows for us to get this information to you. They offer top-of-the-line blue blocking glasses, which, as we know, are critical for our health these days for blocking artificial light at night. Over 90% of our time is spent indoors under artificial lights, and this puts us all prone to circadian rhythm disruption. You can use the code Quantum Healthy for a discount. Link is in the show notes.
Thank you so much for listening to the Quantum Healthy podcast. We hope you found some value in this information. And if you feel inspired, please share it and leave us a 5-star review. This will help us reach so many more people. If you want to connect with Laura, you can find her at laurakistmanwellness.com and Andeea at andeearay.com. Links are below in the show notes. Now, go find some sunlight and embrace your own quantum healthy.